Welcome into the Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Great summer day to talk hockey. This is Eric. We have Megan and Rudo coming up. Let's talk a little bit today, puck-wise. Let's talk about some of the things maybe that we were kind of finishing up a couple days ago, before kind of Sly interrupted us and he was lost in the woods and we couldn't connect. And we were talking, Megan, a little bit about not necessarily teams, but individual. Remember, worst contracts, best contracts. And we kind of got cut off short a little bit. Then we said that obviously today we'll touch on teams that were winners and that were losers, because we kind of touched on the winners, and we'll talk a little bit about the losers and a little bit of Avs news as well. So why don't we just jump right into what I don't remember if it was you talking, me talking, anyway, about what we thought was the best value contract and individual. So I'll give you the floor, and then I got mine, and we'll go from there.
And is Jonathan Drouin still on the table for best value? I know we probably led with that as being the best of this offseason so far.
Yeah, for me it was, right? And then again, I'll just pick another one. You know what I mean? But we can. I mean, I think you and me agree that I think we were both on it that it had to be the best value. I mean, it was no question the best value contract of the summer. A lot had to do with the agent, the player, the team. Kudos to everybody involved, and for all the reasons and everything that he's gone through the last couple of years, and it was awesome. So, who else do you got besides Drouin? Because I agree with you, it's number one on the list for sure.
And we dug into the Beauvillier contract a little bit on that show, so that one still remains up there. And Matt Duchene staying on in Dallas for that value, I think, is kind of necessary for Dallas to improve over this offseason, or at least stay more or less the same. Losing Tanev is a huge piece from their group, that being able to retain a player like Duchene on the heels of a season that numbers-wise was similar to Jonathan Drouin. The difference, obviously, is you expect that kind of a season from Matt Duchene with a more limited role than he's used to in the Dallas forward group compared to what Jonathan Drouin accomplished in his last season. So numbers-wise, very similar. Obviously, his contract comes in a little bit higher than Drouin's at $3 million again, but good business for Dallas to keep on this player who's obviously motivated to stay in Dallas. That's kind of the understated part in all of that, is that Matt Duchene has a say in that contract, and he decides to stay on for a contract that is very friendly to Dallas.
I like it, and obviously they got hurt a little bit, like we talked about with Tanev, and they lost some guys, and they didn't really add much, right? So I think it was important. You're right, to keep Duchene, whether you like him or not. What I'm saying is he was a good fit for that team, and that's a good number. And you're right, it's a good value contract. I'm going to go with, and again, I say it all the time, and for all the reasons, I respect the player, Jeff Skinner. I'll put him in one of the best contracts, even though he's not my favorite. So I'm stepping on my ego here for a second, but it is good value as well at $3 million, and who knows how he's going to fare with guys like, that have been to the Stanley Cup finals and, obviously came very close to winning it all. And this is a guy that a lot of it is made that he's never played in the playoffs. Again, I'll be the one to say it. A few months back, I said it too. Like, sometimes we peg guys in that, they can't play in the playoffs because they've never played in the playoffs. And, Jack Eichel and never played in the playoffs, won the Stanley Cup. So is Jeff Skinner that guy, or is he that guy that can't play in the playoffs? Or, what I've said about Jeff Skinner is good player. I've classified that as a good player on a bad team. I've always said that, and I'll say it again. He hasn't proved me different, meaning when he's the guy, when he's on the top of the list, when you get the good ice, has he been one of the guys to lead his team to the playoffs? And he hasn't. That's my beef with him, so to speak, right? And not that, I'm a fan of the Buffalo Sabres, or, I don't like Jeff Skinner. I'm saying my knock on him has been he hasn't delivered, and again, he's not the only guy. It's a team game. but he's been part of those top end guys that should lead you to the playoffs, and he did. Now, with that said, ironic, I say it's one of the best contracts of the summer, and there's a reason for that, right? We talked about that the other day. When you get bought out, you get 2/3 of your money, and so he's not losing any money this year. You know what I mean? So even though it's a good value contract for the Oilers, he's getting his money. A little bit like Matty, right? Duchesne in Dallas last year. Now this year, I would say, well, again, there was multi-years left on his deal, so the same thing with Skinner. Maybe you'll see him do the same thing next year. If you do the math, they're not losing any money. But I mean, they are taking a pay cut. They are taking a haircut. They are, you go from $8 million, whatever it is, to $3 million. And he had a, good productive season, right? You know what I mean? So it's like, I do believe it's good value for the Edmonton Oilers. I do believe Oilers were one of my winners, right? So I do think that, he's got to be fine because he is not the guy. He hasn't been able to be the guy, meaning like didn't deliver it in Buffalo. So is he going to do it in Edmonton? Who knows? We shall see, right?
I think that's a really interesting way to transition around teams that maybe didn't crush it this offseason. I think Buffalo is one of them. I don't have them as I hate saying loser, but I don't have Buffalo as my loser. But in losing a player like Skinner on the heels of also losing Middlestat, losing their captain who goes on to win a Stanley Cup with Florida, which is incredible, and I love that story, Buffalo hasn't done very much this offseason. And before I abandon the Jeff Skinner conversation too, I think it's not so different from Matt Duchesne going from the top player counted on in Nashville to getting to adopt a more third-line role and find his production that way without carrying the weight of needing to be the headliner. And for Skinner in Edmonton, I wonder if having some of that pressure taken off his role will also allow him to succeed to expectation, at least in the way that Matt Duchesne has in Dallas. I think that Matt Duchesne couldn't handle that pressure as the headliner, and having a little bit of that taken off in Dallas helped his game. I wonder if for Jeff Skinner, who has still been very productive on a struggling Buffalo team, if there are guys like Connor McDavid and Draisaitl to kind of carry the weight of being the guys, does that allow Jeff Skinner to come into his own?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I was just going to bring up another point when it's all related to that kind of stuff. It's being the guy comes with a lot of pressure. It does. And for Avs fans, I'll use an example here. And this is not a knock on the player because I like the player, I like the person. I think he had a great career as an Avalanche. Paul Stastny, I think Paul came in the league. Joe was around. He was kind of your number two guy, right? He was hiding. I call that hiding in the weeds, where you're not playing against the top matchups. You're not playing against the top centers. You're not playing against all the, the Selke type guys. And it's an easier way to play in the National Hockey League. And then Joe retired, and Paul became the guy. He's the guy now. A little bit like in St. Louis with, the passing of the guards. Like Thomas and Cairo. It took them a little bit of time once Ryan and Riley and those guys were gone. So it's a tough way. It's a different way to play in the NHL when you're the top guy, and there's a transition period. And you're right. Now on the flip side for Matty and guys like Skinner, now they are, on the opposite side of things. They are going to lay in the weeds now instead of being the guy. And sometimes it can be very beneficial for you at the stage that you are in your career and wanting to go win, something like, Skinner's never played in the playoffs, right? So it can be very different in a good way. And that's why, I think we qualify, I think you and I, and I'm sure Rudo agrees with Skinner being, a good value contract, even though, like I say, he's not my favorite guy, which is fine, my favorite player. You don't have to love everyone, but it's a good value signing for sure. It's got to be towards the top of the list.
Welcome in.
Yeah. Hopefully the teams we're about to talk about ran into as much construction as I did on the way into this show.
That's good.
No, we took kind of where we left it off before Sly. Remember Sly was lost in the woods and he was late, and we were talking about the winners and losers, not as a team but as contracts. Individual contracts, and we were just talking a little bit about Skinner and Duchesne, and maybe we can take 2 seconds too, and then talk about the worst individual contract, for me, it has to be, Montour in Seattle. I think that's a contract that's going to hurt down the stretch there in a few years. And like Sly alluded to it yesterday, right? At some point, you price yourself out of being on your team. And again, nothing against the player. I like the player. I just think the number and the length might hurt down the road a little bit. So that would be my toughest contract would be Montour.
I'm with you 100% on that. And don't get me wrong. I love Brandon Montour, the player, but 7.1 mil for 7 years or whatever it was is look at it this way. If you're an Avs fan, we all love Eric Johnson. Awesome player. No doubt at the end of that contract, he wasn't close to worth what it was priced at. And Montour is just going to be that, but even worse, because he's older than EJ was when he signed that contract, and he plays a style of game that is unlikely to live up to aging as well as EJ did. And I know EJ had injury problems, but the actual on-ice product was serviceable until the end, even if it was more like a $2 million player than a $6 million player at the end. And look, I'm sure Seattle will get a solid 2-3 quality years out of Montour. I don't know if he'll ever be a $7 million player, to be honest with you. He's had 1 year in his career where he's even come close to that value of a defensive player. Again, not that he's not a good player, worth $5 million maybe. He just overpaid in both contract price and contract term, and that's how you get your organization into trouble.
That's Devon Tave's money.
Yep.
And this is, there are ways in which the Avs are winners for not doing things or for having done things prior to this offseason that have aged well, at least in the first year.
Sure.
And that's really hard to justify, and it's confusing for the identity of Seattle's decor. I think that is the area of Seattle's lineup that I've had the most question marks around. Is Vince Dunn and Adam Larsson enough to headline that top pairing?
Sure.
And what does the rest of that shape out to be? And Montour's just kind of a confusing piece. It's like, this is a coveted player for a reason. Brandon Montour is awesome.
Yep.
But what does that mean for the identity of Seattle's decor? That's why Seattle in general comes out as a kind of confusing team for how they've handled the offseason so far, because they also didn't like the Chandler Stevenson contract.
Yeah.
And I like that player a lot as well, but he has not been trending in the right direction, and to lock him into also a 7-year contract is a little bit confusing. And that's $6.25 million. That's also still a pretty expensive contract that is quite a commitment to that player. It just doesn't seem like it's going to give Seattle the boost that they need in the immediate. Those are important pieces, but I just think that when they lost the depth from the series that the Avs played them in 2 seasons ago, they just haven't really recouped that. And so this last season Seattle team just wasn't well constructed. It wasn't well rounded enough. And this helps to get them closer to that goal, but I don't think it gets them immediately competitive enough to get there. And this isn't going to age very well.
They paid both of them as if, in Montour's case, they kind of paid him to be their number one, which that's not what he is. At best, he's a number two, probably more suited to be a second pairing guy. And with Stevenson, they paid him to be a top 6, and realistically, when he was at his best in Vegas, he was their number 3C. So it feels like they're overpaying a guy to play in a position above where he probably belongs. And I'm not going to say it's never worked out in the NHL, but when you're doing that to older guys in their 30s, you're running a pretty high risk there.
There's younger pieces in their forward core that I like, but it's still not enough to completely justify this. Like, I think Matty Beniers is a really talented player. I love the emergence of Ty Cartier, who's still billed more as a depth forward for this group and hasn't totally solidified his role. So it's not to say that this is just too old for Seattle and what they've done. I just don't know that they've done enough at other parts of the lineup to justify paying that much money to just 2 players.
Agree.
I mean, so we're doing basically Seattle, right? I mean, which led to Seattle. I mean, that's what we're doing, correct? Right? Yeah, I know, I agree. I love it. That's what I'm saying. And because that was my worst signing, and again, God, I hate saying that, but my toughest signing, Montour. Because like you, Rudo, I like the player, but like Megan just said, I had Seattle as well on my list of again, we hate the word losers, but for me, they're going to end up being losers on the day, because if you look at that 7 years on the screen for both Stevenson and Montour, like we just talked about, it's a boatload of money. I mean, it's a boatload of money. I just here's my take with the Kraken. I just feel that it's hard to pinpoint a little bit where they're going, you know what I mean, or what they've done. They started their first year, and again, they had a lot to live up to with Vegas, right? Obviously, being the expansion a couple years down the road, and all of a sudden the model and what Vegas did was absolutely unbelievable. Going to Stanley Cup final. As a first-year team, their draft had knocked it out of the park. You knew that it was going to be a little bit tougher for Seattle with the expansion draft, because teams were more prepared for it. You know what I mean? Unlike Vegas, where they got caught off guard, with doing things they shouldn't have done. And, I think they thought that they could, teams I'm talking about, oh, this is a right way for me to unload money or whatever it is. And it just ended up biting them in the butt. But Vegas was masterful at it. I would say that it was a lot tougher for Seattle now. They go in that season. It wasn't very productive, wasn't very good. Then they go last year, they beat our Avalanche, right? Which is all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, like these guys are going somewhere. And then all of a sudden they have a year like they had this year, where it's like, oh, okay, now you move on from coaching change. And then you got Danny Bosma coming in now. And, I just feel that free agency kind of it was the same way, you know what I mean? Like, where I'm not too sure what they're trying to do, you know what I mean? So that's why I put them in the loser category.
For sure. Let me tell you this. Don't be Seattle when it comes to free agency in the job market. Make sure you're using Indeed to find your employees. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform for over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. And they have a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with your candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. So go jump on with it. Make your life easier when you're looking to hire some new people for whatever your job might be. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. It's Indeed.com/AllCity today. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And once you've hired up, maybe you want to have a little bit of fun with a little bit of extra money, head on over to Bet365. Use code DNVR365 when you sign up. You can get the app with that QR code on screen right there. And when you do, you get your choice of betting $5 to get $150 in bonus bets, or you can get a first bet safety net offer by placing a bet of up to $1,000. And if your bet loses, you get it refunded as bonus bets. So you can play a little bit of a big fun bet that you might miss because you'll get it refunded in the end. Jump on with Bet365 and get part of over 10,000 boosts every single month, including a DNVR custom bet that we throw out there every so often right now. We got some people in the bar watching the Euros right now. I'm sure there's tons of bets on that. Go ask our boy Dre. He's the big football soccer guy in the team. So go jump on it with Bet365. You must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. Getting back to Seattle, look, I think this is a theme that we're going to come across with multiple teams that we talk about today, but where are they in their build? Because as a team, as you mentioned, that made the second round 2 years ago and then misses the playoffs this year, making big splashy moves like a Montour and a Stevenson feels like a team that wants to push to be a contender more immediately and will deal with the consequences of the end of those contracts later. But it doesn't feel like Seattle is in a position to really make that push just yet.
It's quite it feels plausible if they're counting on Shane Wright taking a huge step forward. And with a coaching change, too, to account for, that could go a lot of different ways. And
Sure.
so that's also another way in which it's a gamble, because the pieces that exist on this team, I really like McCann. I really like Eberle. I just touted Matty Beniers, too, as another piece that I really like. But we also recognize the shortcomings of a player like Burakovsky, who was suited for kind of a third, second-line role flex versus being a verified second-liner full-time. I think that those are some challenges that Seattle is still facing in the roles that the current group of players are designed to fill. And then goaltending. If we've learned anything from the Avs 2022 Cup run, it's that goaltending doesn't have to be the best part of the lineup, but it's still a little bit uncertain for Seattle. And in looking then at the types of gamble that they're taking in needing some of the young players to rise to the occasion and hoping that some of these aging players will sort of trend in a different direction all of a sudden, it's definitely beginning to take a lot of risks and counting on hope more than anything. So it's not to say that Seattle can't be a competitive team in this next year. It's just they fell off quite hard in this last year compared to the playoff push that they had made just before it. And it doesn't instill then a lot of faith.
I think the reality of that situation is, look, yeah, did the Avs win a Stanley Cup with just okay goaltending? Sure. They also had, at absolute worst, a top 3 defense in the league. In my opinion, the best defense in the league, at least that season. Is a defense of Vince Dunn, Brandon Montour, Jamie Alexiak, Adam Larson, Will Borgen the best defense in the league? No. Are they okay? Sure. Can they stop you from losing to a Philip Grubauer that hasn't posted a 900 in 3 years? I don't think so. I know they got your cord over there, so.
Yeah, no, I like Joey, the core. So he took a big step forward last year, right? And then I think he has to be the guy moving, forward this year. He has to be the guy getting the nod from the get-go. And I think that he can move the puck like Marty Brodeur could. I'm not comparing to Marty Brodeur. I'm saying, like, moving the puck is an essential part of if you can do it right, it's so important. And this guy's probably the best thing I've seen, for example, in the American League the last few years before. Obviously, now he's in the NHL, but it's a big component of his game. I do believe that he needs to play. He needs to play more than whoever else puts on a Seattle Kraken jersey, and I think he can do it. So we'll see. Time will tell, but I agree. I think we're all talking the same language about the Seattle Kraken. I think it's just moves that I don't want to say impatient, but maybe impatient moves, meaning like, even though they were an expansion team, they weren't supposed to do good. They didn't do good. The next thing you know, they did well. Now they're like, oh, we did bad again. So do we do moves now that will make us get back right on track? And I don't want to go through the process of playing the young guys and, the rights and all that kinds of stuff. So we'll see. Time will tell, but it's certainly a little bit confusing, for the Seattle Kraken right now.
Seattle as their loser.
I did.
You did? All right. Eric, who do you have?
Yeah, I had Seattle too. Yeah, that's what I had too. And then
More though. So who else you got?
I got Anaheim. When I say Anaheim, it's for me. At some point, you got to take a little bit of a step, right? Now it's been a few seasons where things aren't. They've unloaded people, and I just feel, for example, the San Jose right now is, with Will Smith and Celebrini, and they're just making a little bit of noise, and then Wallman, and they're adding some veterans, and I don't know. I just feel that who else signed in San Jose, for example, to compare? God, who is it that just signed a 4 or 5 year deal in San Jose? I'm having a blank right now, but I know we're talking about Anaheim, but they could easily chosen, Anaheim, but they chose San Jose because it's a little more sexy, a little more attractive. Even though I do like Anaheim, if you look at their young players up front and their young players on D, I really like them. From what I'm told and what I've read and what I've seen, is they were in on some guys, and they lost out on. for whatever the reasons. Like I said, for whatever the reasons. If San Jose is a little, like I just said, a little sexier right now because of Will Smith and Celebrini. But you can't spit on the Anaheim Ducks with their young guys come up. But at some point, you have to turn the corner. And I think to some degree, some teams or agents felt that they weren't turning the corner. You know what I mean? Like they weren't like, they're not turning the corner and they're not as attractive as other guys in the other teams in the division. And that's why I have them as my losers, because they didn't really add anything when you think about it. I don't think it's from a lack of trying from Pat Verbeek and their staff, but I don't think it's a very sexy off season on what they've had. When you look at it, it's very limited, very, very low. And that's why I call them a loser, where I should say I feel more bad for them, you know what I mean? Because they weren't unable to pull the trigger on a few things that I know we're trying to get.
It's tough for a team that, they finished bottom 3 in the NHL last year. And so you're not expecting them to completely turn it around and be a powerhouse this year, but it really felt like a team that didn't do much of anything. If we're being honest, I made a tweet kind of ranking the off-season moves so far a couple days ago, and Anaheim fell in the didn't participate category because they just didn't really do anything outside of internal stuff. I don't know how you get better if you don't at least try. And like, I get it. Don't get me wrong. Doing nothing is probably better than making gigantic mistakes, but you should have the space to at least try some stuff when you were as bad as Anaheim was last year.
Well, in the way that we talk about Bedard or the upcoming season for Celebrini, like, you need players around them as well to support their development. And Leo Carlsson had a really intriguing first season. He was really sheltered intentionally in how his NHL minutes were unveiled to him. I think he handled it really well, and he's ready for more. And so with a team like Anaheim, with money to spend, they could have built a little bit into their forward core to round it out. I love Troy Terry. There are pieces of their forward group in Anaheim that I really like. But with Gauthier being a player, too, that's likely to contribute in some way next year, you just feel like there's even more incentive then to invest a little bit into this team. Obviously, it's not for immediate success, but it is for the development of young players like Carlson, Cutter Gauthier. Like, you still have a Mason McTavish who is, I would say, I wouldn't say established, but he's closer to being established than some of the other young players, that you don't want those important years to go to waste either.
To me, this screams like a team that's trying to tank this year. $22 million in cap space left. Yeah, they have to sign Jackson Lacombe, whatever. That's a couple $1 million. It's a team that has a ton of space, that can take on a ton of bad contracts, rack up picks, do things like that this year. That sucks. For the players on that team, you're looking at an organization that they won't come out and say it, but sure looks like a team that's not trying to win a whole lot this year. To do that in July is bad.
And that's why I want to add, like, it just came back to my mind there, what I was saying about earlier, about being attractive to a free agent attractive with some cap space. And I was saying, like, San Jose, I was thinking of Tyler Toffoli. I was having a blank, but Tyler Toffoli probably could have, signed in Anaheim, or maybe Anaheim was after him. You know what I mean? And that's why I say, and again, I don't know this for a fact. I'm just going by putting 2 and 2 together, right? And then you're seeing it, and you're like, he could have signed in Anaheim. You know what I mean? But he chose San Jose, and that's why I say that they were losers in free agency. And I agree with Drew, though. I agree with what you're saying about, God, I mean, with all the money they have, it should have been an easy fit to throw money at people. But that's my understanding is that there was some money thrown at people. They just didn't get chosen. They didn't get chosen to go to the dance, to the ball. So, it doesn't mean that they're not in a good position. Like, I think they are in a fine position. I think they're okay. They just got to turn the corner. And sometimes adding a few pieces, like through free agency, and not making a mistake, but adding one or two good solid veterans that can help you on the score sheet and help you young players, like we just said, the McTavishes of the world and things like that. And, Zegras, who knows what's going to happen with him. Wouldn't surprise that any one of us here, if he's traded in the next couple of weeks here and he's not an Anaheim Duck by the start of training camp. But we're talking about free agency today, and we're talking about winners and losers. And I would say that, because of their lack of dotted line signage, you know what I mean? Like maybe they were trying, maybe they had a plan and it was the best plan in the world. It just didn't work. It didn't work, and they weren't able to sign anything or anybody worth, mentioning like a Tyler Toffoli.
Your backup plan is to just have $22 million of cap unspent. Not great.
We'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it.
I could use a couple mil real quick.
Can we interest you in a Val Nichushkin?
It'll take up $6 million. We'll take up $6 million real quick. Look, I don't think I would be wearing Shady Rays if I was Anaheim, but maybe if you're the Avs or San Jose Sharks, you got to look into that bright future and get those Shady Rays on. So make sure you're heading over to shadyrays.com to try the polarized sunglasses, given 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Tons of different designs. You can even get your polarized glasses colorized so you can rep your team colors and things like that. And right now, listeners of this podcast can get 35% off of their sunglasses for the summer with code DNVR. So make sure you're getting over to Shady Rays, checking your sunglasses out. The coolest part is, first 30 days, you don't like them, you break them, you lose them, they'll replace them completely for free for you at shadyrays.com. So get over there with Shady Rays, get your polarized sunglasses on, and get that 35% off with code DNVR at shadyrays.com. And once you've got your fantastic sunglasses on, make sure you're sipping a beer with Coors Light. Wearing your sunglasses, maybe out at the park, maybe at a sporting event, grab yourself a Coors Light so you're chilling and enjoying yourself this summer. It's the beer I reach for when I want to chill. I'm sure we've got some people drinking some down at the bar right now, watching the Euros. So go check it out. The mountains turn blue as it gets cold. Beer literally made to chill. That's how it works with Coors Light. Of course, it's brewed right here in Golden, Colorado. You got to go get in on it if you haven't had it. It's a great time. I mean, I don't know. Who hasn't had a Coors Light that's an adult and is allowed to drink? I feel like everyone's had it. You know what's up. Go get yourself some. You don't even actually have to go get yourself some. You can just sit on your couch and go to CoorsLight.com/DNVR, and Instacart can get it delivered right to your front door here in Colorado. So make the most out of the times that you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light even, and get to CoorsLight.com/DNVR to get it delivered right to you. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. So, I also picked the team that I think has similar struggles to what Anaheim did this offseason, but maybe in a little bit of a different spot. I picked Detroit. And I don't even think the signings they had were terrible. Bringing Patrick Kane back on a 1-year deal is fine. Talbot as a tandem backup guy for a mid-range team is okay. Gustafsson on a 2x2 is a nice deal. Tarasenko may be a little bit of an overpay. But the problem isn't who Detroit signed. It's that they didn't do enough. This is a team that, unlike Anaheim, was on the border of pushing for a playoff berth this season. Obviously, they come up a little bit short there, but they were competitive down to the last day of the season, still could have made the playoffs. They seemed to have big plans leading into free agency. They actively moved Jake Wallman out of their lineup to create more cap space. The rumors are flying around them. And then you watch Gensel go to a different team. You watch Stamkos sign with a different team. You watch all of these big cost players not go to Detroit. And then they're kind of just left with stuff. And this isn't a team that it feels like is trying to tank like maybe an Anaheim is, as seen by the Tarasenko deal. It's a team that thought they were going to try and get better and get more competitive for a playoff spot. And honestly, I don't know that they did.
Well, oh no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm still completing my thought. Oh, okay. It reminds me of the off season, like last year. I want to say even the year before. I get them a little mixed up, but it's like adding a bunch of stuff and the overall picture doesn't come together super well.
Yep.
And I was trying to very specifically, because it was like Perron was a part of it. Was Chirot also a part of it?
Was the last year. Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, right? It feels like, okay, well, these are like best available and we're desperate. Grab. Because it did feel like, I don't even know if Kane would have stayed on. It did kind of seem like when names like Gensel and Stamkos came off the board, it's like, and we are forced with this.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit confusing. It does feel, I guess, similar to Seattle in like counting on some internal options to take a big step forward. They're counting on a player like Simon Edvinsson to take a step forward and be a key piece and on the blue line next year. But I'm not going to pretend like the Avs aren't taking similar gambles. They just have a lot of backup options to surround it, like with a Sam Malinsky kind of deal.
Well, and they were way more cost efficient about it too, right? And I get Detroit still has to sign Raymond and Seider this offseason, but even after those deals, they're still going to have $7-8 million left over that they ended up just not spending on pieces to try to help them get to the playoffs. So I don't. This is a team that is. We're year 5, year 6 of this supposed rebuild for them now, and it does not feel like it's coming together. But Eric, I don't know what your take on it is.
Well, they call it the Avs are playing, right? I got a lot of respect for Stevie Y. You know, I was shocked last year a little bit when, Patty Kane, for example. I'm going to use Patty Kane, the signature. Okay, so you're actually trying to make the playoffs. Obviously, that's what they're trying to do, right? Now you got Kane signing there again. I'm a firm believer. Once you've had Stanley Cups and Kane's had 3, you want more. I don't think you just play because you want to go play for a 30th place team or a team that doesn't make the playoffs. I'm a firm believer in that. So Patty Kane's been in that dressing room. He's been there now, and then he chooses to re-sign with them. So he must see something that maybe some of us like I don't see it. So I'll go against Patty Kane. What do I know? He's got 3 cups, and he's All-American. I mean, Mr. USA, right, over the years. But he's a heck of a player. He's one of my favorites. But I don't see it. I don't know. I just feel that it's a missed opportunity, like you just said. Maybe they were trying for the Grand Slam and it just didn't work, and then now it's stuff. I think you said it funny 5 minutes ago. You said stuff put together, which I agree with. You know what I mean? And that's what it feels like to me. And then, or I'm missing, or you're missing something. I think time will tell. But I do believe I agree with you that there was something bigger in place, and it just didn't. And I get it. It doesn't always work, right? It doesn't always come to fruition. And, maybe it wasn't from a lack of trying or a lack of planning. It just didn't come out. But I do believe that, there's a time and a place that, where things work and sometimes it doesn't, So what do I know? You know what I mean? Like Patty Kane he's a guy that all of a sudden decides to choose that destination. It must be a reason. But I'm with you. I don't see it.
Tarasenko too, like a piece that is shiny but kind of disappeared in the playoffs for Florida, and so I think it's 4.75 that he agreed to 2 years.
Yep.
That's more than Jonathan Drouin money, and it just. It feels like a little bit of an overpay for a player who might not make a huge impact inside the forward group.
Yep.
And then at the goaltending position, Cam Talbot, Jack Campbell, like just kind of a switch for depth goaltending and then counting on Alex Lyon to be the truth. And maybe that's the case. It's just how it all comes together does still feel like an identity crisis with some shiny toys, but it's not clear how those all come together.
It's a lot of hopes and dreams there more than a plan, it feels like. So
am I missing the Husso? Like the Husso's on somewhere? Did I miss that?
No, he's still there too.
So you got Husso, Campbell,
5 goalies. It's I don't know.
They have 5 goalies.
They're San Jose from last offseason. Some of those dudes are going to end up getting moved, I assume. But
Not a good feeling. Not a good feeling if you're a goalie. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm all for fighting, as I tell you guys all the time. Like, I'm all for fighting for a spot. But you're talking about guys that have been in the league now for, Talbot's been there. Obviously Campbell's been out of the league now for a year, but Husso's been there. And then who else did we say?
Yeah.
Who am I missing?
Lion.
Lion. Yeah, Lion. That, obviously did awesome in Florida and did pretty good there last year too. So, yeah, that's a tough situation for goalies right now.
I just don't know how you look at Detroit's offseason and say that they got better. And I don't think that Detroit is in a situation where not getting better is acceptable. Because I should put it this way. If Detroit's decision was to not get better, they needed to blow it up. They can't just sit in this middle, we did some stuff, but we didn't really do anything impactful, and we didn't actually make any moves to say, hey, we're rebuilding, or hey, we're going for this. We went, hey, we love being in the Calgary zone. We're going to stay here forever. And
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, it's not a good hockey team.
It's exactly what the Flames were for
Dylan
so many
Larkin's
years.
still playing well. Lucas Raymond, DeBrincat, Comfer's in there, Kane in the mix. Like, that should be better.
Should be, but it isn't. And you know what? Part of me is okay with Detroit not being any better. So it's all right. It's all right a little bit on that front.
What an unbelievable run they had, though, for 20, whatever it was, those years. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, but you're right. Now they're starting to get stuck in the flames. The flame zone. Not the friend zone, but the flame zone. Flame zone.
I don't think these are the only teams that were terrible in free agency, but it's certainly these three stuck out the most to me as far as didn't do enough or didn't do well enough in free agency. In Seattle's case, probably did a little too much.
Some also did too much, and I wanted to dedicate a moment of this show, a moment of silence for Cap Friendly.
Yeah, come on, man. I already miss it.
I'm just pausing to give the moment of silence. And then I want to talk about Washington because it's so convenient that Cap Friendly dies and they're incredibly over the cap. Like, they did a lot this offseason and they needed to because I don't know how they met the fate that they did last year, kind of screaming and clawing their way into the playoffs because goal scoring was down on the whole. And goaltending was, I wouldn't say bad, it was just intriguing, and it got more intriguing than adding Logan Thompson to the mix after the year that Lindgren had. But I don't know, there's things that they did, like they take this huge swing on PLD, and then Mangiapane, kind of a reclamation project, joins the mix. I like that. I like some of these moves. They bolster D with Chychrun, bringing that into the fold. But they're incredibly over the cap, so they have to make some decisions about what they're going to be.
Can someone who knows the rules better than me explain to me how Washington's current lineup is legal? Because I'm sure I just don't know the correct rule about this exact situation in the offseason. But from what I understood, the offseason you're allowed to go 10% over the cap, which would be around $96 million. And Washington's at $101 million. And I know that they have some LTIR candidates on their lineup, but LTIR doesn't apply in the offseason. That counts against your cap hit.
I'd like to give you the answer. I'd like to tell you that I'm a master of that. I sucked, and I still suck at that part of the CBA. It's not my forte. And then, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And obviously the technicalities are... Let's put it this way. Like, if they wouldn't be able to do, stuff if, they were not complying, So there must be a loophole, you want to say, or something that we're missing, that you're missing, I'm missing, But Cap Friendly can help them now, and then they can figure it out.
To hide.
I'm really not sure. Washington is a weird team, and again, a lot of that money is like, okay, well, Nick Backstrom's $9 million. This doesn't actually count against their cap. He's essentially LTI retired. But still, a team that it feels like trying to go a little bit all in as a team that got swept in the first round last year, and a team that nobody really thought was going to be competitive in the playoffs. An organization that is built a bit weirdly at the current time with guys like Alex Ovechkin, who, don't get me wrong, he'll still give you 20 to 30 goals a year, but he's not the Alex Ovechkin that's going to power you to a Stanley Cup anymore. I don't know. It's almost like the opposite of Detroit, where it felt like Detroit was on the up and then shot themselves in the foot. Washington is on the down, and it feels like they're trying to get the plane back to level and not crash and burn into the ground, but they're stalling the thing. So I don't know.
Spencer Carberry, he's a smart guy. A new coach last year, tough position. When I say that is, I think Ovechkin's earned the right. I mean, he's chasing Wayne. God, that is like, never thought it would be possible. You know what I mean? So, with that said, it's a tough spot for a coach. You know what I mean? To, like you said, I call a spade a spade. Alex Ovechkin is on the downhill. He's not on the upswing. It's not. So then, but you also have to give him the cookie and like I tell you guys all the time, the good ice, right? So then it takes away from somebody else in your team ice that might give you some team wins, and so it's a tough position to be in. I agree. Megan said like downswing now to the upswing in a sense, and because they took some swings, and it's a little bit of a mishmash, but again, there's no bigger reclamation project than PLD. I mean, that's I don't know, wherever he goes, it seems to be a mystery. So they see something that maybe, obviously other teams saw, because it's not his first team, so it's not the first time somebody takes a swing at him. But time will tell. I just feel that it's a little mixed bag of directions. It's like an exciting bag, where they're like, it's like kind of going left and right. It's like a mouse in a paper bag and trying to get out. So I don't know. I don't know where this is going to go, but it's certainly been intriguing for, like you said, by also acquiring Cap Friendly. It's been an intriguing offseason.
They can offer Brandon Duhaime money. If the Avs just were extremely over the cap, they probably could have too.
Just go $10 million over. It's fine. Who cares, right?
I don't know.
And I have to hate Washington now for stealing Cap Friendly from us.
I am really disappointed about that. I think that's why I had to bully them a little bit. You got to get it in. Just straight up stealing one of the best resources of the cap era. So, boo Washington. Boo. Not that. I'm sure someone will replace Cap Friendly over the next couple of years. P.S. Puckpedia, get a dark mode, man. I refuse to use your website until you get a dark mode. It's so bright.
When I'm restless and can't sleep at 2 a.m. and I need to look up somebody's contract, I'm not getting flashbanged, all right? It's not. I need a dark mode. Okay. Looking through this offseason as a whole, and I don't necessarily need specifics here, but I want to ask you guys, with the cap starting to go up, obviously it goes up $5 million or so this year, and expectations that it's going to continue to go up significantly over the next couple of years. Does that give teams more wiggle room to do things, or does that give teams more opportunity to make big mistakes?
Boy, oh boy. I would say, God, I'm going to go 50-50. Like wiggle room, 50-50 mistakes. We all know it. God, it's not. I hate the word mistakes because, you're trying, you're swinging, as fans, as people following the team, or even as players, sometimes you just kind of like sit back and you get mad at your team for not doing anything. And you're like, oh God, and I know a lot of people will say some of the best trades or moves that you don't make are the ones that end up being great, because you didn't make a mistake. But, I'm always one of the belief that, and I go by that saying all the time, what will you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? Which is nothing, because that would be boring. You know what I mean? Like life would suck. But I think you got to swing for it. But I think many times it just doesn't work out. It's just life in the business. And sometimes it's, if you do your homework, if you do your due diligence, if you do whatever needs to be done, and it doesn't work out, then you shouldn't be a manager in the league. You know what I mean? That should be, where you make too many mistakes, then you should be replaced. And that's no different than a player or a management team. Or again, the GM is usually the one that gets his head cut off. But at the end of the day, there's a team behind them. But I do believe that you got to swing, and that $5 million, like you're talking about, I think is awesome, because now it allows you to swing. It allows you to try to go for something, that you can't sit still or be stale. I know sometimes par wins, right, in golf, but a lot of times birdie wins as well, right? You know what I mean? Like Aston Cup, he'll tell you. But, at the end, that's an old movie right there. But, sometimes you gotta make moves. You gotta go for it. You gotta believe in your staff. You gotta believe in your system. You gotta believe in what you can do. And certainly $5 million can help you do that. But there's certainly going to be mistakes. That is 100% positive. It's never bulletproof, and you never see a summer of moves where everybody made great moves. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, most people will make bad moves. There's only one winner. So Stanley Cup winner.
I know it's a cop-out to be like Eric, like it's both, but it is both. And it's evidenced even right now, like how Colorado approached the cap rising was absorbing Devontae's contract extension. That's a very responsible move.
Yep.
And then how other teams have handled it is handing out 7-year crazy contracts, particularly to defensemen, with kind of a place of desperation, like a need. There, I think an emphasis of importance has been placed on that position with Florida having such a strong decor. And I think, and how we talked yesterday on the pod about how I think teams will derive inspiration from the recent Cup winner. I think that is why teams started throwing out big money contracts at some of the defensemen in this offseason free agency. And so I think that it's a tale of two different types of GMs. There's kinds that are going to view it as more of an investment in getting a core piece like Devontae's locked up, and others who are throwing big money in the immediate in hopes of a quicker solution.
It's an interesting conversation, right? Because unless you're making a really big mistake, mistakes don't really exist without success stories. I think a perfect look at it is you go look at July 1st this year, and you're watching a lot of defensemen sign really big contracts. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Brandon Montour is probably a mistake in and of itself, standalone. But you watch a lot of these other D sign for $5 million, $6 million.
Yeah, Tanev.
Yeah. And then later in the day, Sean Walker comes in at 3.6 by 5, and you're like, oh, that's a good deal. All these other deals look bad now. You need some success to have some failure to balance against each other to see what the mistakes actually are.
The older child syndrome. Like, the oldest has to make the mistakes before the younger siblings.
Don't remind me, okay?
Sorry.
That the younger siblings make the mistake, too. The parents just don't care anymore.
Yeah, they're desensitized because they reacted when the older sibling did it.
We got to be missing something on that Walker deal, going back to it, because I was thinking about him for my best deal instead of Druin, but it was very close in my mind. But we got to be missing something. I don't know if it's whatever. There's something to Carolina. I don't know if there's anything is his wife from there, or is somebody that's I don't know. Maybe we're missing. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, we're learning about Trouba there, that obviously signed in, what do you call that, in New York with their residency and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if there's anything with Walker, or was he was getting 4 years somewhere else, more money, and then all of a sudden Carolina said, we'll give you a 5th year in the lower AAV. I don't know. But there has to be something in there. That doesn't add up. He's a better player than what he's been given.
I agree.
Yeah, again, you'll never, sometimes you get to know, but totally up to the player. He has his reasons, I'm sure, and can share them if he feels so inclined. But some players want money, some players want terms, some players want to be somewhere they're comfortable. Some players want to win. The list goes on and on and on for reasons to go to any particular location. But these things also set markets. When someone signs low, every team in the NHL is going to be, yeah, but look at that guy's contract. We want to sign you for that number.
And that's how Yakov Trenin got paid.
Exactly. It works that way, too.
It creates a little bit of confusion with the PA and some pressure and all that kind of stuff. It does. You do get a little bit of, I don't want to say pressure, but pressure from the PA.
No, it's all good.
Yeah. I didn't hear what you said. Sorry.
No, I was just. That's the way it goes. They want you to take a little bit more money sometimes. So.
I get it. That's why they're around, right? It's for the benefit of the players.
Yep. Yeah. It's. Is there anyone else we want to touch on today for free agency, or should we start wrapping things up?
We can make one announcement for Peter Budaj.
Yeah, there you go.
The official announcement of his new role joining the Anaheim Ducks staff as the NHL goaltending coach. Really excited for him in this opportunity. He helped Justus Annunen in a big way. He would light up Annunen, that is, anytime that he talked about the impact that Budaj had on him as a goaltender. Yeah. So really excited for Budaj in the next chapter.
Wonder if that means they're trying to move on from Gibson, but...
Yeah, this feels like Lucas Dostal music.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love him. I love Booz. Booz is one of my favorites, as you guys know. So we go a long ways and proud of him, excited for him, and I love his style. I love the way he deals with goaltenders and all that kind of stuff. So it's been awesome and good for him and his family and his boys. They'll have a good time. So it's all good.
The one other news item I got in my email, as I was parking today, Dallas Stars officially announced a direct-to-consumer streaming service. Come on, Cronkies. You can do it.
It's getting frustrating, right? The former Arizona Coyotes could do it. Vegas has done it. Yep. Dallas is doing it. There's probably more I'm not even counting in this.
There's a precedent now for NHL teams to be able to do this. The Dallas one potentially even free to consumers. So let's go. Get it together, Avs. Get a direct-to-consumer streaming service out there. Anyway, beyond that, we are going to wrap up today's show. Be sure to stick with us. A ton of events going on with DNVR this summer, including watching Copa America. Of course, we'll have a ton of watch-alongs for the Olympics that are coming up. In the fall, we've got Broncos and Buffs, not takeovers, but like travel trips. If you want to go to Vegas, I think one of them's in Vegas. I don't know the details of theirs. I can tell you, our Ball Arena takeovers are coming. I know we have one against Minnesota. We have one against Montreal. I forget what the other one is against, but we're going to have 3 Ball Arena takeovers. Keep your eyes on the website for when those go live. Make sure you get tickets to come party with us. Always a great time there. For us, the rest of this week, tomorrow, we're talking prospects, big prospect show. We'll go through the Avs whole organization. And we'll tell you why every prospect is the best ever, and the Avs never make any mistakes, for sure. And then Friday, we're doing a mailbag. I think we'll probably get a tweet out tonight where you guys can ask us questions about the Avs offseason or the Avs in-season or not hockey-related at all if you want. So follow us on Twitter over at DNVR_Avalanche. Get your questions in reply when we post that tweet out, and we'll answer them on Friday's show. That's all I got for today. So we're going to wrap this thing up. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and we will catch you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.